And so today we're going to be talking about boundaries. Keeping good boundaries is a problem for every person that is struggling with and is a survivor of complex trauma. Why is that? Well, because the very definition of a boundary of trauma is a boundary or a value being violated. When you witnessed a boundary or a value being violated and you were helpless to stop it, that's trauma. And when it happened again and again and again, when it was actually the whole environment, the whole spirit in which you grew up or were trapped in for a long period of time, then you have complex trauma. So all complex trauma survivors struggle when it comes to boundaries. And so today we're going to learn about what we can do so that we can stop falling back into the same cycle that having a lack of boundaries puts us in. Because we know that it's a fact, statistically, it's a fact that if you come from complex trauma, you're more likely to again later be assaulted. You're more likely to again later be violated. You're more likely to later be abducted. Why? Well, because the environment that originally caused your complex trauma was an environment that did not teach you good boundaries. So your sense of how to have boundaries and where the boundaries should be and how to enforce them, when to enforce them is skewed. And as a result, you're walking out into the world without the proper defense system. And so it's no wonder your boundaries get violated again and again. So what do we do about this? Well, it's very important to recognize yourself as a sovereign state. You need to view yourself as a sovereign state. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, sovereign coming from sovereignty, meaning rulership, and state, meaning a plot of land, a place, an area. So you have to view yourself like a sovereign state. This is a country that has the right to rule itself. A sovereign state does not depend on any other country to give it its rules, its laws, its procedures, its boundaries. It creates its own rules. To rule itself is its own sovereignty. So you have to look at yourself like a sovereign state. Unfortunately, for so many victims of complex trauma, because they don't put up the proper rules, the proper boundaries, or the proper limits, they become like a country that gets invaded all the time. And their attitude towards countries invading them is, oh, that's okay. I mean, hey, we can let them come in and take our resources. And oh, that's all right if they want to come and take our women and they want to come and take our children and they want to come and enslave our men and they want to come and take our water and they want to come. Because they don't enforce their boundaries, they're like a country without borders. And without any border enforcement, no border protection, just people coming in, taking what they want and leaving. And what eventually happens to a country like that? It doesn't exist very long. It gets depleted. It's in a state of emergency. And that's why the system of a complex trauma survivor is in a state of emergency, that is anxiety. That's why they become depleted, that is depression. And they start to feel suicidal. They actually want to kill themselves because the inner self, the metaphysical self, has been violated again and again and again to the point where they cannot take it anymore. The anxiety and the depression are your metaphysical signals. The subconscious is creating a cocktail of chemicals to give you an emotion to let you know, hey, something is wrong right now, right? Pain is for protection. That's why we have pain. That's why we have pain in the body. It's to protect us. So your metaphysical pain, your anxiety, your depression, that's there to signal you, to protect you, to let you know something's wrong. Make a change. Unfortunately, when a complex trauma survivor gets to a certain breaking point where they're like, okay, I need to make a change, it's like too late because they didn't set the boundaries along the way in the first place, because they didn't set like periodic boundaries, like one after another. Now, by the time they're so violated that they feel like they need to take a stand, it's going to be something extreme. And so they're like, I got to tell my husband I'm going to divorce him. I got to tell my girlfriend that it's over. I got to ghost her. I got to go to an extreme. I got to run away. I got to hide. I'm going to go to an extreme. I'm going to hit. I'm going to use my words to hurt someone. I'm going to purposely hurt them. I have to go to an extreme to enforce my boundary now, because it's already gotten so far. The violation has already gone so far. I don't know what else to do. But then think back, there was a pattern that was established, because what happened when they were being raised is their mother or father would violate their boundaries and not allow them to have a voice, and not allow them to stand up for themselves, and not allow them to protect themselves, not allow them to get what they needed until they absolutely snapped. And then someone would finally respect the boundary. They had to run away. They had to do something extreme. And they learned, this is okay. I guess this is what I have to do to be heard around here. I guess this is what I need to do to be respected. So they never learn a nice, ordered way to have boundaries and to enforce them. To be able to simply negotiate with other states, but maintain their sovereignty in a way that's peaceable and harmonious. So think of yourself like a sovereign state. You have borders that need to be protected. You have natural resources that are valuable, that other people are going to want. Your time, your attention, your energy, other resources like your talents, your money. Other people are going to want what you have. But you are a sovereign state. You must recognize you have borders, and you have to create laws, right? For a sovereign state, you have to create laws for your citizens inside your country. And you have to create rules for what you're going to do when someone crosses that border, right? So you're going to have border control, right? And you're going to have an army and defense systems. And inside, you're going to have a police force. This is how you set up a country. Every country is set up this way that survives, right? And to the degree they're able to defend themselves is the degree to which they're able to survive. Do you know of any country that cannot defend itself, but is able to survive? Likely not, unless those countries take an obsequious position, that is a lower position to another sovereignty, which is what so many of us have done as people pleasers. Those of us who default to fawning when it comes to fight, flight, freeze. And we say, oh, you know what? I'm no threat to you. I'm no threat to you. I need to survive. The only way I can survive is just by bowing down, making myself low. Hey, look, I'm nothing. I'm no threat. You know what? I'm not even here. I'm not even here. You guys, you just do what you do, right? And you actually murder the soul. You murder your inner self so that the narcissistic soul can have its space and survive and feed off of you and your natural resources. So we must recognize that we're a sovereign state, and you have the ability, you, the conscious self, have the ability to make your own rules and laws. This is an inalienable right. I'm telling you right now, you have the ability, in fact, you have the responsibility to make laws and rules for yourself, to rule yourself, and to keep yourself safe, and to keep yourself healthy. You have the responsibility to protect yourself. Because if you're not going to do it, who's going to do it? It's your job. You are the protector of you. So please recognize your sovereignty. Please recognize your right, your universal right to create rules and boundaries for yourself. And guess what? Your rules can be whatever you want your rules to be. Here's what you get to decide. You get to decide how people treat you. If they violate your rule of how they treat you, then you get to decide what the consequence is going to be. Typically, you're going to restrict them. You're going to put a trade embargo on them. You're going to actually restrict trade. So now you're going to say, you know what? You don't get access to me. I'm not going to give you one of my resources, which is my time. I'm not going to give you my attention. I'm not going to give you closeness or intimacy. You can actually withhold and restrict back from people your resources as a response to them violating your boundaries. You get to do that. It's your right. In fact, it's your responsibility. We expect you to. If you don't set any boundaries, if you don't ever say no, then you never have anything left for yourself. If you don't ever say no, you don't ever have any time left to pursue the things that you want to say yes to. So it's imperative. And it's imperative for your health, for your mental health. It's the violations of the metaphysical self drive you into anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. They drive you into disassociation. They drive you into a lack of mental health if you allow people to violate your boundaries. So what do you got to do? Well, you got to set firm boundaries, firm rules, and you got to enforce them. How do you do that? Well, like we said, somebody violates a boundary, then you enforce it. You utilize your voice, right? Just like we would expect the law to give us a warnings, state the law, put it in writing, tell us something, right? Before you just start shooting, you do the same thing. Use your voice. It's this little thing right here with the vocal cords. Use it. You speak up for yourself. Complex trauma survivors feel like, well, I can't just speak up for myself because if you do what? What's going to happen? And they have all these irrational fears. Well, then people aren't going to like me. Okay, so what? So they don't like you. You're a sovereign state. What's important is that you protect your natural resources. Well, if they don't like me, then I won't be loved. If I'm not loved, then I'm alone. I don't want to be alone. And that's typically what it comes down to. They won't like me. They won't love me. I will be alone. Guess what? You're already alone. You're a sovereign state. Protect your boundaries. Protect your boundaries. You want people to leave your stuff alone, right? The United States wants people to leave our natural resources alone. We don't want people coming in and just taking things out of our country, right? So you have to set your own boundaries and enforce them. So it is to say, you know what, I'm okay with the idea that maybe they're not going to like me, maybe they're going to think I'm mean. And here's the worst one, I'll feel guilty. You know, if I say no to them, I'll feel guilty. Maybe you will. But it's better to feel a little bit of guilt now and have all your resources than to be depleted later and have nothing left to give anyone. Because in the end, you feel way more guilty when you have nothing left. And your children have to be raised by someone else because you're hospitalized, or because your anxiety drove you into physical exhaustion or a lack of health, and as a result, you pass away. Anxiety is life or death. Depression is life or death. These are diseases that you can die from, but they're also preventable. So you have to recognize, okay, so I can play with my own life here. I can put my life on the line so that I say yes and I don't feel guilty, or I can take the guilt, say no, accept that maybe they don't like me, maybe they don't love me, and as a result, keep my health and get to live longer and therefore be able to do more for other people. It's a no-brainer when you really get down to brass tacks and you think about it, right? It's really a no-brainer. So I want to teach you guys to be really, really observant about when people are trying to test you to see where your boundaries are. Because the reason why complex trauma survivors are more likely to get assaulted and reoffended and reviolated and raped and molested and abducted is because predators test to see where people's boundaries are. And then when they see that you have a lack of boundaries, then they go in for the kill. But they do tests, right? So I want you to be educated and aware of your enemy's designs, on the way your enemy moves. See, predators are going to do little things. And by the way, these can be anyone. This can be someone in your family. Narcissists are predators. This could be someone in your friend group. These people are all around you. They're 1 in 5, maybe worse. So if you know more than 5 people, these people are all around you. In fact, you might have more than the usual amount around you because you have no borders or boundaries. So I want you to really understand the way that they work and the way that they think. So they're going to test you. They're going to throw something out there. So let's say you work with them, right? And they see you working and they want to see, boy, I wonder if this person has boundaries. I'm interested because they look like they could be prey. And they'll try something like an off-color joke, or to make a little remark that's kind of borderlines on sexual harassment, or something that's inappropriate, and just see how you respond, you know? So then if you just kind of giggle uncomfortably, or you work to just make them feel comfortable, they see they have an in with you. This person has a lack of boundaries. Good. And then they're going to move in. They're going to try to rob you of your natural resources. Let's say a person might try something like you go to shake their hand, and let's say they're your employer. You go to shake their hand, you meet them for the first time. They hold on to your hand too long. These little things that they'll do, really slight things I want you to be aware of. They're testing to see your boundaries. Now, if you just stand there and just kind of get uncomfortable and and they see how you just get small like that, you're allowing them to take your space. That person has a lack of boundaries. For a predator, they see you as prey. Be aware, be sharp. This is how they work. For instance, might be a work situation, some kind of work event, right? And they say, hey, why don't you just ride with me? And you go, oh no, I have my car. I can drive my own car. Oh, come on, it's gonna be a waste of gas. Just come on, just ride with me. They push your boundary. It's a test. And you say, all right. They put themselves into helpless situations. Very good. They let me get the power position. Do you feel uncomfortable yet? Because this is exactly how predators work. This is how they think. It's these little situations that are so small. They seem harmless, but they are not. Have strong boundaries. Let me show you how a person with strong boundaries responds to these situations. Person makes an off-color joke, a little remark that's a little inappropriate for work. Person with strong boundaries says, what? 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 I was just making a joke. No, what did you just say to me? They're going, abort. This person has strong boundaries. They will never test you again. In that little, small interaction, because you were sharp and you just have strong boundaries, they're done. And as a result, they will not abduct you. They will not assault you. They won't test you. You've lowered the likelihood that you will be re-victimized because you set up strong boundaries. No, I will call you out. And guess what? You're thinking, oh, I don't want to be unliked. Yes, you do. You want to be a little bit unliked. You want to be unliked by predators, don't you? You want predators to like you? No. You want predators to love you? No. Deal with it. Be a little bit unliked. You pick and choose whom you're going to give your resources to. Don't just give them up. Let me give you the next example, right? They hold on to your hand a little bit too long. You're shaking hands. and they're holding on to the hand a little bit too long. Here's someone with strong boundaries. Snatches their hand away. Wow. Wow. Low in agreeableness. Psychologists call this low in agreeableness. People who are low in agreeableness make more money. It actually works in this world to be a little lower in agreeableness. So you pull your hand away and your boss is going to go, oh, believe me, he's already scared. This is a very scary situation for him because you just exposed him for pushing your boundary. He's done. He's going to change the subject. He's going to move on, and you're going to get promotions because he wants to make sure you're good, because now he's worried about how this is going to come back on him. Be watching. Hey, come on, we can just drive together. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, no, thanks. I have my car here. No, come on. That's going to be a waste of gas. Let's go. Let's go. No, thanks. I'd rather drive my own car. Oh, come on. Look at this. Look at this lady over here. Look at this. She'd rather drive her own car. That's it. You walk away, get in your own nice, safe car and drive yourself. And guess what? As a result, what do they learn? Wow. Wow, that person is not an easy target. Forget it. I guess I'm not going to abduct them. I guess I'm not going to assault them. I guess I'm not going to use them as narcissistic supply. I guess I'm going to move on and slink away and go do something else, because this isn't easy. And when you show narcissists, you show predators that you're not easy prey, they're going to move on. They're going to go to someone else. So how can we do this? How can we set up these strong boundaries? I'm going to show you a little illustration that I made. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Let's see if I can do this. Can you guys see that? I'm going to assume you can. Can somebody give me some kind of...
Yep, you're good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roman.
Thank you. This is my first, that's my first time sharing the screen. So yeah, I painted this little picture here, and the colors are irrelevant, but this target represents boundaries around yourself. Now look at yourself in the middle, all safe and tucked in. Isn't that beautiful? Look at all these layers of boundaries around you. Now each of these boundaries represents a space in which you will allow someone else. And in this pink space in here where it says ME, that means you only allow yourself. That's the only one who gets allowed in the inner circle, right? The very inner circle. And inside that circle is you, yourself, your thoughts, your emotions. Do you tell other people all of your thoughts? If you do, that's a lack of boundaries. Don't do that. Keep your thoughts to yourself. Do you show everyone every emotion that you feel? If you do, that's a lack of boundaries. Don't do that. Keep your emotions to yourself. Now let's go to this next circle here. I got it color coded. This purple is going to represent that outer circle where you're going to let in the most closest person to you, and that's your spouse. That's your spouse. So your spouse is going to get special privileges because they get to be closer to you than any other person. Isn't that beautiful? So your spouse, you're going to share sex, but only with your spouse. No one else gets sex. That's boundaries. Intimacy, romance, certain levels of affection are only going to go to your spouse. That's how you protect your boundaries. And your spouse expects that, and they're going to appreciate. Oh, this person really has boundaries. They don't show intimacy and this level of affection or do anything romantic or talk romantic to anyone else but me. I appreciate that. The next level out, you might have a space for your children or those who are living in your immediate household. So for your children, they're going to get things that not everyone gets, right? But they don't get as much as your spouse gets, right? That's boundaries, right? So you're going to have a level of intimacy with your spouse, romance with your spouse, sex with your spouse. You don't share that with other members of the household. You don't share that with your children, right? That's boundaries. And so you're going to give affection to your children. You're going to give love to your children, but it's a different level of affection and love. It's different, right? And it's just for the children, not something you're going to give people on the next level out, and that next level out represented by the green, it represent your family and friends, right? So you got your children are getting love and affection and attention, but family and friends don't get this same level of love and affection that your children get, right? Because you might cuddle with your kid and watch a movie, but you're not going to necessarily do that with people who are outside of that immediate household circle, right? And so you're going to have that difference, and that differentiation represents a boundary. So with your friends, you're going to give them something special. You're going to give them your time, right? Your conversation with family. You're going to spend time, have long conversations with family, right? But then we see a difference between how you're treating your family and how you're treating associates and neighbors. These are the people you work with, your workmates, your work associates, your colleagues at school, people who live near you that you see from time to time. Hey, Doug. Hey, Bill. So your neighbors, you're going to be friendly, right? Not friends, but friendly. Friendly indicates a demeanor, an attitude toward them. It's where you're smiling at them, you're kind, you're cooperative, right? But it doesn't go too much beyond that, right? It's not like you're going to sit and have long conversations with them like you would with your family and friends. Right? You're not going to give them as much of your time and attention as you would with your family and friends. There's a different boundary. That differentiation represents a healthy boundary for those associates and those neighbors. Why is it important for us to have these boundaries for our associates versus our friends and family? Isn't it kind of true that you don't know your associates and neighbors as well? So you never know if they might be a potential predator or bad guy. So you're going to have those boundaries, and those boundaries keep you safe. And they also keep you from feeling like you're wasting your time because you're running around with everyone's problems and issues. Well, no, just focus on you and your immediate household, and then you have a little left for family and friends. But don't give that to associates and neighbors. That's a boundary. Next level out in the orange, that would be where the strangers are at, right? So with strangers, do we need to be as friendly and cooperative with strangers? The answer is no. Hopefully you didn't struggle with that. Some people feel like they have to always be friendly, even to a stranger. Be careful. Be careful. Every situation is different, but sometimes smiling at a stranger could almost be like an invitation. Someone with strong boundaries, who's low in agreeableness, they don't feel the need to smile at every person on the street. Sometimes that's not a good idea. So be discerning. Be careful. We don't know. They're strangers, right? Strangers equals danger. So be very careful with strangers. That's why they're way out on the outside. They don't get the same privileges. And then finally out here in this way outer circle, this represents where we put bad guys. Well, what are our boundaries for bad guys? We avoid them. This is a whole category of people that we actually run in the other direction. If we realize that a person's a predator, then you're going to move them from whatever circle they were in all the way out to the bad guy circle. And there they will stay until you deem that they are safe again, which they probably will not change. So chances are this is lifelong. They're going to be out here in the bad guy circle. And your boundary is going to be, I avoid bad guys. I avoid predators. So you're going to run away from them. You're not ever going to go near them. You're not ever going to go close to them. You're not going to give them any of your time, any of your attention. You're going to avoid them. You're going to go out of your way to avoid these individuals. Does that make sense? And so as you look at this graph here, this is how you should organize your life, right? And so bad guys, they don't get the same civility that you would give a stranger. To a stranger, would be civil. You're not even civil with a bad guy. You just run away from them, right? And these strangers, they don't get the same level of cooperation and friendliness that you give your workmates and your neighbors. And your workmates and neighbors, they don't get the conversation and the time that you give your family and friends. And your family and friends, they don't get the same love and affection that you're going to give your children. And your children don't get the same intimacy and romance that you're going to give your spouse. And your spouse doesn't get to know all the thoughts and emotions that only you keep to yourself. See how that is? That's healthy boundaries. Now, if I can only figure out how to turn off screen share. Let's see what we got here. There we go. It took me a while. I know there is probably some really smart people here who are like, I know what, hit the button wrong. But thank you for being patient with me. So that's how we want to set ourselves up. That's how we want to set up our boundaries. View yourself as a sovereign state. Now, at this point in our meeting, we want to allow you to interact and talk back. So let's open it up for comments. You can feel free to throw a hand up if you have a question or a comment that you want to make. And let's just start with words of appreciation from what we appreciate or any questions we have. Go ahead, Sarah. Why don't you start us off?
So for me, it's like, for me, I don't have time for people that are like, my problem is that I'm both, like, because I don't have time for people that really hurt me and really out to get me. Like, people that I don't know are just don't fit my needs or don't fit. I'm trying to think of how to explain it. I'm a people pleaser myself, and I have great anxiety. It's just like, I don't have time for that, and I don't make time for people that are just gonna be manipulative or call me selfish, or just things like that. Like, but at the same time, I feel like I'm the kind of person who people can prey on, because at the same time, like, I'm always afraid. It's not, for me, like, it's not about, like, it's not about, oh, well, this person's not going to like me if I say no. It's more like, I'm afraid they're going to gaslight me and make me out to be like some crazy person if I share my feelings about things. Like, I don't want to, like, if I share, like, hey, I felt this way when you did this, like, and then they unjustify that feeling, like, and it makes me, I think that's my problem personally, is just like, I feel like my feelings are going to be invalidated. It's really not always about, like, being unliked. That's
Yeah,
what I
appreciate that, and we appreciate that you're able to set up those strong boundaries, and you don't have time for those time wasters. But to that same principle, the same thing applies to having a fear of being unliked. That fear that they're going to gaslight you, that fear that they're going to make you out to be something you're not, that they're going to oppose your viewpoints. Will Smith, there's people who don't like him. Oprah, there's people who don't like her.
right.
Anyone you can think of in history, there was someone who opposed them, even Jesus. There's someone who doesn't like that person and will oppose them and have an opposite ideology and say that they're actually crazy for having their ideas. So that's not the goal. It's not the goal for no one to oppose us or view us a certain way. The goal is to protect ourselves and our natural resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Appreciate that expression. Appreciate you, Sarah. And welcome to the group. Nisa.
Thanks.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was no is a complete sentence.
Mm.
Because whenever I didn't want to do something, whatever that happened to be, I would always feel like I had to justify it, feel like I had to give them my excuses, feel like I needed to prove that I had the right to say no. And that gives certain people, a lot of people, an in, to twist whatever you're saying, or, or try and convince you that what you think and what you feel are not, in fact, justified, and you should be doing what they want, So it's almost better to just cut it off. Like, I'm sorry, but no. And just leave it at that, because you are not giving them the opportunity to continue to work on you.
You got it. Well stated. Well stated, Anissa. Well stated. Emma?
Well, so talking on boundaries real quick, I am good at setting boundaries for everyone else except for my abusers. So I was diagnosed with CPTSD this year, so like within this month. And I have a 5-year-old daughter, and for the longest time I was like, this with my parents. I wanted to be at their house all the time. I wanted to hang out with them. They're really good with kids, so for 4.5 years, my daughter has built the best relationship with her grandparents, very playful. They help out a lot since I'm a single mom, all this, but finding out that I have CPTSD and that it stems from the childhood trauma and emotional abuse that they gave me, looking back, I'm like, oh, that remark makes sense. I can see it there. I can see it there. Of course, they're not seeing any of this. If I express, hey, I'm going through some trauma, I've got some childhood trauma that I'm processing, they play the whole woe is me, we failed, blah, blah, blah. So in boundaries, my question to you, since it's such a challenge for me, is my personal boundary would just be to back off, not see them, except for maybe holidays. I don't really need to live near them, but now my daughter is involved. So how can I set a boundary to be away from them and respect my space, but also be around them for my daughter?
It's a great question. And welcome to the group, Emma. We appreciate your expression and your bravery to share with us. So 100%, if the person is abusive to you, then they are a predator. They are abusive. So therefore, they're not necessarily going to be good for your daughter. One of the best decisions my mom ever made was to set a boundary and leave my dad. I was not raised around my dad. And when I met him, I was glad. She also cut off her relatives, and I was glad. Why? Because they are predators. I did not want to absorb that energy. And when I grew up without him, sure, I had a little bit of a lack there, but I found others to substitute. And I'm so glad I wasn't raised around those people. I would not be here today. So what your abusers use, Emma, is title, positional power. So they say, well, I'm your mom. Well, I'm your dad, right? Since I'm your mom, then that means that I get to cross your boundaries. And you know what? No, you are a sovereign state. You are emancipated from your parents. If you're over 18, you're emancipated. You're done. You're proclamated. You are liberated. You are free. So therefore, you do not owe her. She made the choice to have you. Nobody owes anything. She gave you food, but that was her choice to have a child. So she owed you. She had to give you the food. So you do not owe your mom. You can set your boundary, your decision on how much you're going to see her and how much she's going to see your daughter. Your daughter lives in your sovereign state right now until she gets emancipated at 18, and then she's going to get to decide for herself.
And I went back and forth on a boundary that would compromise both. And I thought, well, I'm cool with them having supervised visits, like from me, because if my dad makes a remark to my daughter that he has done to me, and I've been able to open my eyes to the abuse and kind of comments he says. So if I'm around, I can say, hey, no, we're not talking to her like that. But, on the same hand, I fear that if I say, you guys can see her if I'm around, they're going to get super defensive, and I'm afraid of that response.
You are afraid of that response, but what you're more afraid of What you need to be more afraid of is if you don't protect yourself and your natural resources, and you don't protect your daughter and her natural resources, because that it's a life or death game that you're playing. So you're 100% right to set your boundary, and the boundary decision that you made up, that you decided upon, okay, supervised visits, that's the correct one. You know why? Because it's you who made it up. You came up with it, and you're the queen of your sovereign state. You are the queen. You make the rules. You set the boundaries, and we applaud you for that, Emma.
Thank you. Thank
On
you
the-
for
On that topic, that she was saying, so the bad guys, if your family is like narcissistic and abusive, they would be considered the bad guys, right? And not really your family. Like, in, you know, the green one where it says family and friends, wouldn't they be considered the bad guys at that point?
Very observant. Yes, unfortunately, you are going to have to take some of your own closest family members, and you're going to have to put them out in the outer circle. Good question.
Okay, I just wondered about that.
Hey, Allie.
Hi there, Roman. Happy New Year. Hello, everyone. This was such a brilliantly orchestrated, and I love the metaphor. It was just really spot on. Thank you so much for that. I love your use of the infographic as well, because many of us have struggled with, and I can only speak for myself, proper appropriation of the roles. You talked about positional power. Okay, I hadn't heard that term. I jotted it down. That was really key. And these discussions help to cement the understanding and the need for really getting it around allowing for the shift up. Because as a matter of fact, I don't know who just spoke, I also had realized while you were sharing, wow, the bad guys aren't necessarily wearing like scarves over their faces, the balaclavas, where you're like, oh my God, it's a bad guy. I mean, and gloves, like they're a burglar. It can be your family. Your family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder. My nervous system always knows. And it makes total sense that I have this kind of retreat stance whenever there's an invitation to do something, whenever I'm guilted or shamed into a position of make wrong, when I'm holding a firm boundary around, you know what, I appreciate the invitation, I'm going to pass. It would be great to see you. However, there's so much water under the bridge and so many elephants in the room. I don't even know how to begin to broker a holiday gathering at this point when we've not done the work to even be there together, as if all is well and it's not. And then my sister's a shutterbug, and she's very covert in her tendencies, and she's the constant pouting, or you know what I'm talking about. She's all over Facebook, and I'm just like, can we just have a gathering without having the pictorial narratives of every time we get together, like it or not? And of course, every photo where I'm like this, she posts, I'm like, did you not notice my eyes are closed? What's going on? So she's like, well, I like the photo, I look good in it. But it's the lack of regard, and it drives me nuts. So thank you so much for that. I actually replicated the infographic here. Is that something that you're going to post, Roman, like on our page for the group?
No. I don't have any plans to post it anywhere. No.
That's really good. I mean, I guess I could recreate. I don't want to, but
you have to draw your own.
I know I can get some colored pencils and rock it out. However, I just wanted to acknowledge you and to thank you again for really making this information so digestible and connecting the dots in a way that it makes it such that you're putting it where the goats can get it, as they say. It's really great. Thank you so much. And it's very affirming, because I've been working on creating strong boundaries for some years now. And interestingly enough, when I first instituted them, there was so much pushback from my sister and my mom. why is she doing that? That doesn't make any sense. Oh my gosh, all that kind of thing. And now when we're talking with other people, they have selective amnesia about it. However, what I also learned is that healthy people are fine with boundaries. Toxic people are not.
Exactly. That's
Mhm.
a really good point, Allie. And I
Mhm.
appreciate your approbation and praise, and we appreciate you being here. Thanks for your expression. Chanel.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Allie, first and foremost, thank you. This was really helpful.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, in my family, it's very frowned upon to do things like this. So it's been a while since I've been in therapy. So I feel like this is my way to like ease back into it. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was what Emma was talking about her daughter being in the middle. And with us, with you being your own sovereign state and obviously taking charge over your child, would that have like negative impacts, like as being a controlling parent or things like that? I guess those are some of my fears because my mother was kind of like that with me. So I'm very sensitive to like doing things that will traumatize her for life.
Mhm. So your concern is that if you try to protect your daughter, that you'll actually be controlling like your mom was. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good a good question. And the reality is anytime we try to protect, we have to impose a boundary or a limitation. And the limitations that we impose are there for the protection. But if there's a limitation, then that means it also restricts freedom. There's no way around that. So you have to restrict some freedom to create a limitation. Your seat or to create safety. Your seatbelt is for safety, but it restricts your freedom to move as well. Fences are for safety, but they restrict your freedom to run as well. But here's the thing with children. They did a study where on a playground there was a fence, a big fence around the playground for this school, and some of the parents complained and said it makes the children feel like they're all caged in. Take away the fence off the playground. So they took the fence down off the playground, and the children, instead of playing freely on the playground like they used to, they instead all clumped into the middle of the playground once there was no fence there. And the reason was because they didn't feel safe to be able to go free around the playground like they did when they had the fence. So instead of viewing the fence as being a restriction, they viewed the fence as being a safety. And with that safety, there was more freedom to play. They put the fence back in, and the children now spread out and they played right up to the edge of where the fence was. So the reality is, as a mom, as the queen of your sovereign state, go ahead and you decide what sensible boundaries you will put in. Yes, they will restrict some freedom. Yes, it is you exercising control. But if it's done right, your child will thank you when they are older.
Can I
Thank you.
jump in on that too? And I love that analogy because that gives me a peace of mind of, I'm being a seatbelt, not a restraint. But I didn't catch her name, the last girl that went. For me,
Chanel.
In regards to my daughter, she's 5, and I fear the same thing of, am I gonna say things or do things that are gonna affect her the way my mom has affected me? And my approach, now she's only 5, but my approach is that I'm just open with her. If she says, why haven't we seen grandma and grandpa all week? I'll just tell her we haven't been getting along and I don't want to be around them right now. We don't need to go into, grandma's been kind of mean to mom, but, I want to keep things age appropriate, but open with them so that, when they're 16 or 17 or understand the concept behind everything, and they say, hey, we want to go to grandma's, and you can say, that's your choice, you can do that. But if they say something that upsets you, stand up for yourself. I want to give her those tools so that when she's a teenager and can, kind of just be open with her or him at the age appropriateness, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And I can say for myself, when I was a kid and I asked my mom about my dad, when it was age appropriate and she informed me that my dad was physically abusive of her, that helped me it answered my question. Why isn't my dad in my life? Oh, well, he was physically abusive. Thank you. Now I know the answer. It didn't scar me as a child. If anything, it made me aware and to be a better man when I grew up. So we don't have to overly shield our children. And you're absolutely right. As it's age appropriate, you'll give them information. Also, as it's age appropriate, boundaries change. So the boundaries that you're putting on your children in terms of restrictions for their safety change with age. And so as they get older, like you said, exactly. Oh, you're 16, 17. If you want to go to your grandma's, you're welcome to do that, because I feel you're at an age that's appropriate. And now that boundary is lifted and you have more freedom according to your age. So we definitely applaud you, Emma. Parenthood is not easy, but please keep in mind, you guys are good parents. You are not narcissistic parents. You will not accidentally be a narcissist. It's not going to happen, because your fear of becoming a narcissist is in itself prevents you from being a narcissist, because narcissists don't have that fear. Katie?
Hey y'all, thank you so much for this space and everybody who's shared and everybody who's here. This is my first time joining, and yeah, some of the things that were brought in were just like, I've been working with my trauma for a long time, and it was just like mind blowing, like, oh, move them to the bad guys. Like, they don't have space anymore, get rid of them. And it's just, I felt like a point of liberation in that. And so I just like, thank you so much, because I feel like that was so needed for me. And yeah, and I'm here because I noticed that even in working with a therapist and everything, like I need community. And so hearing from all of you is just like really so helpful. And just, I appreciate how brave everybody is through their vulnerability. And then I did have a question around like, you know, in some of my work, I'm told like boundaries can be flexible. And I think I'm working a lot with like duality and things being, you know, so binary. And like, that's just the way that we're all conditioned in this country. And so I work with that a lot in my own mind. But like, how do I know when the boundary can be flexible? If I can't establish a boundary, how the hell do I know when I can make it flexible? I think I struggled with that a lot.
Very good. So there are differences because you have preferences, and preferences aren't the same as hard and fast rules, hard and fast boundaries. And so you have to be able to discern, is this just a preference? Because a preference is flexible, right? I prefer that my girlfriend doesn't drape her leg over mine when we watch a movie, but I can also just chill, right? And just be flexible. It's not violating a deep boundary, right? And so if she likes it, then I have a basis to be chill about it. But at the same time, there are those times where I need to say, hey, no, this is a boundary. So how do we know the difference? Well, Katie, I'd like to inform you and every member of this group, you were appointed the sovereign leader of your state because you're qualified to be the sovereign leader of your state. You are intelligent, and intelligence is a very important quality in a good leader. You also have natural compassion. You have a good understanding of ethics, like what's fair, what's right and wrong. And you have personal power, your voice, your ability, your capacities, and your capabilities to take action. All of those things make you the perfect leader over yourself. And so you're the queen. And so if the subjects were having an issue and they weren't sure how to solve the issue to themselves, they bring it to the queen. Likewise, in order to resolve some of the more complex issues, I would like you to engage your cerebral cortex, your conscious mind. And when you're in your conscious self, your highest self, then you'll utilize your intelligence and discern, is this a boundary that I can bend? Is it time to lift this boundary? Or is this a boundary that needs to stay enforced? And the way that you guys can do that is by utilizing the rule of just say no. In every situation, recognize that as a survivor, you should just say no to everything everyone asks you all the time. Your old policy of always saying yes doesn't work. That's a lack of boundaries. So what we're going to do is we're going to put up too many boundaries. We're going to say no to everything initially. But what it does is it gives us time after we say, oh, can you take me to the airport? No, I don't think I can. Oh man, why? You're a bad daughter. Oh, okay. Well, even though I'm a bad daughter, I still can't do it. Fine, forget it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go ask your brother. Now you can think, now I'm not under pressure. So now I can really engage the conscious mind and analyze this. Will it really take away? Do I want to do it? How am I feeling about this person? Where are they? And now you'll analyze it and decide, you know what? I'll do it. I'll do it now that I've analyzed it. And you can go back and say, you know what, Mom, I'm going to take you. I changed my mind. Done. When you say yes, you can't go back. You're stuck because now you've given your word. Yeah, I'll take you. And then what happens? You resent them. They leave the room. You're like, I always got to be the one to do everything. My siblings don't do anything. That's because you keep saying yes. Stop saying yes. Just say no. Engage the conscious mind. Sarah, you have a comment, and then Allie will get your comment.
Okay. One thing that I have trouble with, probably why I don't belong much of anywhere, because I don't feel like I can express who I am without anxiety of some sort. You said that anxiety can kill you, or anxiety type disorder or whatever. That kind of scares me because I have extreme anxiety, and I'm just wondering how I can make it work for me and not against me, I guess.
Very good question. So anxiety, what happens when you have extreme anxiety is that you've learned to run away from that pain. And so you're always doing everything to avoid the anxiety. Well, you have to recognize that anxiety in itself, it doesn't kill you initially, right? What kills you is if you don't deal with your anxiety. So then over time, the anxiety becomes lethal. So don't run away from initial anxiety. So saying no brings anxiety, right? Setting that boundary brings anxiety. Don't run away from that anxiety. Face that anxiety, take that and say, you know what, I'm going to take on this little bit of anxiety. I'm going to say no right now. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to sort everything out. So on your own or with a therapist, use the right tools to sort things out. Your anxiety is your subconscious letting you know there's some things we need to sort out here. Please help me. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm fearful. Please address these things. And so you can address them in your conscious mind and pick them apart and journal them out. And then you realize, okay, this is this goes here. And this way you're managing your anxiety and it's not going to kill you later. But what happens when you say yes and say yes and say yes? Please remember this, Sarah. What you tolerate is what you will be anxious about.
Right.
Your lack of setting boundaries is you tolerating, putting up with.
Yeah.
And then that's that long-term anxiety that's just going to come up and smack you one day with some kind of illness, or you just black out. I mean, so I've heard so many stories of what happens to people who don't take care of that anxiety and it kills you. So it's better to take that initial upfront anxiety of saying no, set the boundary, think about it, then you decide what you're going to do. Work out everything in your mind, work with a therapist or a good coach who's going to help you to organize your thoughts so you can work out. You don't have to live in anxiety. Like literally you can text me or message me and we can bring your anxiety down within an hour. You don't have to live like that, but do the work, manage the long-term anxiety, but don't fear and run away from anxiety, because that's what will lead to your death.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Allie, you're on, and then Chanel.
Wow. Such great dialogue. I love this group, Roman. I really do. You do such an amazing job in supporting us and creating just a well galvanized community where we've got this amazing scaffolding of one another, the teachings, you, and just the modeling of how to live well, while swimming in the waters of the residual effect of the narcissistic abuse. And so what I wanted to ask you is, because I was aware that, wow, even persons that I've been so accustomed to loving for so long can also be perceived or seen or properly identified as bad guys. In my circle, they're not to one another. I'm scapegoated in the family, and it's been really eye-opening, because I always thought I had this amazingly loving, supportive, close-knit, there for one another family. And I've realized that's not really the case at all. So there's been this incredible awakening and this spiritual awakening as well. Apart from getting awake and aware, there's been this spiritual awakening that I've been engaging for the past year and 3 months since I discovered about this stuff. The question that I have is this: the more I learn and the more I grow and the more I heal and the more I desire ultimate healing from this, I realize that I may not go no contact, but I am really low contact with my family. I happen to be at my parents' house right now. And so we're getting along okay. However, I'm going to be going back to my house probably tomorrow. And there is always this need to have a conversation regarding my sister and her husband and my nieces. And my niece, one of the eldest of which has assaulted me a few times. And it's just been ridiculous. It's just hard to even conceptualize how a 12-year-old could have a sadistic streak like that, and it's not being addressed. And there's no family meeting. We just keep sweeping it under the rug. I mentioned it to my sister, who completely forgets that we even had the conversation. I'm thinking, how does that happen? Who does that? A narcissist, and I mentioned that to my mom just a few days ago when my sister exposed us to COVID, because she just had to come over and bring holiday gifts.
Allie, can I get you to
Get to
make
the
your
point.
question more concise? Because I have some others
Sure.
who want to comment too.
Thank you so much. Sure. So the question is disclosure. It's about disclosure. To what extent, if at all, especially if I'm starting to realize I feel like I'm a lone wolf and I feel very alone in this realization of the dynamics. Almost telling fish, I need to talk to you. Did you know you're wet? I mean, they're all swimming in the same environment. And I'm like, hey, this is like not normal. This is not right. This is toxic. Is there ever a point at which maybe reconciliation is possible? I don't know. Like with my nieces, when they're no longer under their parents' roof, one of which, the youngest, is my goddaughter. I have not really been in communication with them. There's a huge rift in the family. We're really well on our way towards estrangement, and I'm actually okay with it. However, I'm wondering, and I don't know if I'm in some kind of shared fantasy around, maybe one day we'll get to skip off into the sunset, locking arms, and I don't know.
Is your question, maybe Allie, is your question if it's possible to reconcile with people who are abusive?
And to explain the truth and to have the truth come out as to why Auntie has been away. They don't know the truth of it now. They only know what they're.
So ultimately, I would say, don't worry about that. Focus on protecting yourself. Right now, you have people plundering your natural resources and you're trying to make a peace treaty. Right now, what you have to do is you have to protect your boundaries. Chanel, let's get your comment.
Wow. And even for extended family who I'm constantly getting guilted by, like, that's a shame. You should be doing holiday. Your mom may not be here much longer. That kind of thing. What do I say to them?
That's a good question. If you want, we can talk more after the session today.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chanel, your comment?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to one of the things you mentioned in the beginning about like being a sovereign state. And then when it gets too late, that you kind of resort to extremes. Like, I feel like that's definitely a challenge for me. Like, I feel like maybe my anxiety presents itself a lot in anger and lashing out and irritability. So I was just wondering, because ultimately that affects me, because when I lash out, then I feel guilty about it. I was just wanting to know your thoughts around that and how to manage that.
Emotional dysregulation. Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. It's dysregulated. So what's happening is you're holding back and holding back and holding back and holding back the anger or the frustration or whatever the emotion is. You're trying to hide the negative, undesirable emotion. And then finally, the time comes and you just snap, and then everyone's like, whoa, Chanel, like, chill out, you're way overreacting. But in your mind, you're not overreacting because this has been building up for some time. So the answer to that is to regulate, which means to show the disagreeableness, to show the anger, to show the frustration in small, regulated, constructive amounts. So it's acceptable to say to people, utilizing your voice, I have a choice. To say to people, okay, you know what? I appreciate what you're asking from me, but I don't want to. Or, hey, I don't like that. Or, hey, I don't appreciate that. They're not, whatever your fear is, they're not going to leave you. They're not going to abandon you. They're not going to hate you. And if they do, then they were a predator. So you'll be glad you stood up for yourself. But the answer is to show the disagreeableness in small ways, in small amounts. It is to speak up for yourself, to negotiate for your space, to say, hey, I don't feel like I have enough space. Can we do something about that? And let the other people on the couch say if they're going to move over, or if you're just going to have to get up and find another place to sit, so to speak.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
For sure. Tina?
Hi.
Hey, Tina. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for this subject and everyone's comments. Boundaries has always been something that I've struggled with. I tend to look to other people to validate myself or to be validated. And I can't seem to get out of that because I guess that was just kind of my coping mechanism, was just to kind of lose myself and look to other people for praise or if danger. I've always said actions speak louder than words. So that's kind of what I pay attention to. So how can I mean, is that because I have such low self-esteem and low self-confidence, or what? How can I turn that around some?
Looking to others for validation.
Yes.
Literally turn it around and don't look to anyone for validation.
Well, that's easier said than done. But it makes sense.
You're absolutely right. It's because of the low self-worth, the low self-esteem, but it's like a cycle, right? Because the more you rely on others, the lower your own self-worth and self-trust and self-esteem goes. And the lower your self-esteem goes, the more you rely upon others to validate the self. But all of this goes back to the way you were parented. And constantly your boundaries were violated, and you were not allowed to develop a sense of self. So your mom, I'm going to assume, or your dad, someone, they, whenever you would kind of try to express an opinion, they would undermine your opinion and tell you that that was dumb, that was stupid, or they would laugh. They'd do something diminishing like that.
Yeah.
Did you have something like that, Tina?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was never able to form an opinion or speak, so I just learned to not, I don't know how to explain it, but I just learned to not be me, to kind of like put up with that wall, because it just made things easier, and then I didn't have to deal with all that negative feedback from them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tina, can you identify that now as abuse?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can, to a point. The abuse goes, into physical and sexual. So to me, those are, worse. But I do kind of understand that that's emotional abuse, I think.
It is, because they're violating your sense of self. So it's mental abuse, and
Okay.
it's emotional abuse as well, because they invalidated your feelings, right? So that emotional abuse and that emotional neglect, along with the other violations you talked about, the physical and sexual violations, all of that's violating boundaries, And they trained you to have no boundaries. What do you think is a predator's objective of teaching you to have no boundaries?
So then they can do whatever they want.
You got it. How does that make you feel? Do you like that?
No.
Then develop that hatred for it and recognize that every single time you look to the outside for validation, you're doing what you hate.
Okay.
You're participating in a program that you did not sign up for. Recognize it as something you repudiate, that you actually hate, because this is a part of your abuse, your brainwashing. And yes, you're going to need to work on building a good image of yourself and building up your metaphysical self. And to that aim, you should reach out to a good coach or a good therapist. And if you need help finding one, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you myself or help you to find someone.
Okay. Thank you, Roman.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for what you said. And by the way, you're a valid person. You are a sovereign state and you're awesome. You're very articulate. You just shared with us what you're going through. You're brave. Don't believe the lie that other people have a better opinion than you do, or other people are smarter than you, or know something that's really going to be so much more profound. You actually should make the decisions for yourself, because you're as good at it as anyone else.
Thanks, Roman.
Brian.
Hey, Roman.
Hey, Brian.
I had a question regarding sort of just boundaries with yourself in a way. And I feel like I cut myself off from my own anxiety and just shoved it down and didn't think about it for so long. And once I finally started to look at it and recognize it, I kind of just feel like I don't even know how deeply to look into these things sometimes, and when I'm ignoring it versus overthinking something. And I have a hard time setting that boundary almost just with my own thoughts, because I just got so used to ignoring it over the years.
And what do you find yourself doing now?
Kind of obsessing about the anxiety and trying to make sure that I've done everything I possibly can to get rid of it and face what I was ignoring before. And sometimes I just don't know if it's too much or not.
It is, yeah. Right,
Yeah.
Brian, do you recognize the extremes?
Yeah, I mean, saying it out loud, I can recognize the extremes. It's just hard to know where that line actually is.
Most important here is that you have to, in your conscious mind, you have to remind your subconscious self, avoid extremes, avoid extremes, avoid extremes, because you're an extreme guy, and that is a result of your trauma, the splitting that happens where you go black or white, this way or that way. And so to keep yourself safe, your initial plan was, okay, I ignore all anxiety. I ignore it. I'm going. And then what happened? Bam, something happened in your life. You hit the crash and you're like, okay, that doesn't work. Obsess on anxiety. Okay, this is it. All I'm going to do is just try to, that's another extreme. We don't want to do that. So you're going to find a place in the middle, and both are right. Sometimes you can't deal with anxiety in the moment. That's why you have the ability to put it away and to ignore it at times. But ultimately you do have to analyze it and go into detail and figure it out and get your therapy. So both are correct.
Okay. Thank you.
No extremes. Bring it in the middle, bro.
No extremes. Got it. Thank you.
Sarah, your thought?
I wonder if anybody else feels this way. I've always since I have mental illness, especially, and things, it kind of sometimes my mind tricks me into thinking that it's delusional to love myself, that it's like it's not reasonable. And I don't know how to overcome that, because it's like, I guess, like, I think of like those people that are really bad in the world, that like Jodi Arias, she loves herself, and everybody, and she just lives in a delusion. And it's like, at what point are you living in a delusion when you love yourself? I don't know. Maybe that was a wrong question. I don't know. I wonder that, because I don't know. I just do. About, like, at what point does it become delusional? Or I don't know.
Yeah. So when you guys get thoughts like that, what you have to do is recognize the two parts of the mind. So Sarah,
Yeah.
what are the two parts of the mind, right? So you have a subconscious,
Yeah.
and then you have a conscious self.
Just, yeah.
So what you do, Sarah, is you engage the queen. So the queen is the conscious self, the higher self. She's compassionate, intelligent, powerful. She's wise. So let's engage the queen into this discussion. So Sarah, your subconscious mind has presented that maybe it's illogical to love oneself. What does the wiser self say about that?
Hopefully that it is wise to love yourself, because everybody needs compassion.
Exactly. You see that? And now allow the queen to rule.
Yeah.
So the problem, what's creating the what you're calling mental illness is disordered thinking, because you're allowing the subconscious to be your leader. But you need to allow the queen to be the leader, the conscious self. You just killed it right there.
Yeah.
You just killed a negative subconscious program. And I didn't tell you the answer. You came up with the answer. You were already smart enough to rule yourself. You were already intelligent enough to know. And everyone here agrees with you 100%. That's so logical. Yes, it's healthy to love yourself. You need to love that is healthy, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's what you have to do when you're having those intrusive thoughts. If it's an unhealthy thought, recognize, man, this feels a little off. I don't know. This feels like a thought that's not going to be helpful, a little unhealthy. Sit down. This is meditation. Bring that thought out, subconscious, engage the queen. Okay, she's here. She's wise, intelligent, compassionate, ethical. She's going to analyze this. She analyzes it in her right mind. She says, hey, this isn't healthy for Sarah. Boom, kicks it out of the kingdom. And now our kingdom is safe again. You're absolutely welcome. And thank you for protecting your kingdom. Wow, you guys are really smart. You guys had a lot of really good questions and thoughts and discussions on this topic today. I think it's only smart for me to yield the rest of our time to you guys if you have any other questions or comments, thoughts, inspirations, intrusive ideas that you want to express, because you guys are on fire today. And big welcome to all the new people who are with us. Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you. Just thank you so much. And I'm studying contemplative psychotherapy, which is like a Buddhist psychology framework. And a lot of what was shared today, I just keep thinking about like radical self-love and how it's just so, in my journey anyway, it's been literally like the catalyst to me healing. And yeah, I just can't like say enough how important my practice of learning meditation, and then away from learning meditation, like embodying how I want to meditate and listening to me rather than listening to like a script. and yeah, just really coming into connection with how to love me, because without it, I can't fill anybody else's cup up, which I think you spoke to earlier, Roman. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. And if anybody ever wanted like resources around Buddhist mindfulness stuff, I've got tons of them that I would be so happy to share with anybody if you wanted.
Thank you so much, Katie. And we're so glad that you're getting yourself into a position to help others. It's going to be great. Emma?
I just wanted to share a little inspiration in terms of the self-love that I have put into practice for myself, because I'm on that journey. But somebody said to me, write down in a journal or, a text or whatever the case may be for you. What do you want your friend to say to you, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever? What do you want them to say to you? You want them to say, hey, I love you. Hey, you look gorgeous today. Hey, I love your smile, or whatever the case may be. Okay, now take that book to the mirror and literally read them out loud to the mirror. No one, I've learned that no one is going to love you the way you want to be loved. So you have to do it. My boyfriend's pretty damn close, but he's not, he doesn't know how I want to be loved. So I have to tell myself in the mirror what I would say to my friend who went through a divorce. And I'm like, girl, you deserve to be loved. This is not your fault. She thought it was her problem. This is not your fault. And then a week later, I'm like, I would have acted the same way, but it's not her, So speak to your friend, speak to yourself, how exactly you would speak to your friend. That's what I'm learning. And that's what I'm practicing. Saying it out loud instead of just thinking it, I think helps the best until it becomes your natural thoughts.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm glad you guys are learning to really love yourselves and accept yourselves. That's so important, and it's beautiful that you're doing that. It's awesome.
I'd just like to say in this moment that I feel like such a wealthy woman. I feel like such a wealthy woman. This is wealth, I mean, the access that we all have, especially in this group. Who's not vibing with this awareness that, my gosh, what a group. This has been phenomenal. So Roman, thank you so much. And I thank each of you who have given of yourselves, and we've poured into this collective cup, like a cauldron that we're all sipping from, this chalice, it's just been the community chalice. That's what it feels like. And we're all healing and growing and rising up and claiming and reclaiming our power and our personal self-agency. So it's just been amazing. Thank you so much.
You guys are welcome. You're
I
welcome.
want to say that I really appreciate this group, because a lot of times I feel like I'm just, talking about trauma and stuff is such a taboo subject, but I think it needs to be talked about more. And it's something that needs to be more of an open topic, and it's something that makes me upset all the time. And I'm actually writing 2 books about my trauma and things I've gone through, and I just really thank you for this group. It's helping me with my mission as well, is just to talk about it in songs and to talk about it in books, because it's important. It all of it's important. I think taboo subjects are something that just need to have more light shed on them. So thank you.
You guys are welcome, and you guys are all welcome to come back next week. I'm going to discuss boundaries again. We'll talk more about how to enforce your boundaries. And all of you are invited back, but we do this every single week. We're here every Thursday, and you guys are all welcome to come back and to participate and to gain from the knowledge and the understanding. Here's my contact information. It's my website, my email, and my phone number. I do help members of this group for free, so feel free to reach out if you need some help sorting anything out. And just recognize how important you are, how special you are. And you have the power to not only help yourself and to heal yourself, but you have the power to heal others. When you grow and you develop a strong core identity, and you've reached that point where you can say, I'm healed, you will be in a position where you can actually help other people and protect other people, whether that's just your own family members, like your children, or you're doing this on a volunteer or a larger scale professional level. So we appreciate you guys so much. We appreciate everyone being here. And I'm going to keep this line open, but that does represent the end of our meeting officially. And if anyone wants to hang back and hang out for a couple minutes, it'll be open for you guys. Thank you so much.